Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Llewellyn-Reed, and I am chair of the Department of Film and Moving Image at Stevenson University here in Maryland, just outside Baltimore. I'm also lead film critic at the website Hammer to Nail and managing editor and critic at another website, Film Festival Today. This is a Q&A with director Sonia Kannabek of Enemies of the State, a wonderful documentary playing here at the 2021 Annapolis Film Festival. Sonia, thank you so much for joining me and joining the viewers of the film. Welcome to the Annapolis Film Festival.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
And where are you talking to us from?
I am in Brooklyn and Bushwick. And yeah, I'm very excited that to have my film play at your festival, because I actually lived in Washington, D.C. For a few years, so I know the area quite well.
Well, excellent. So here you have Enemies of the State, but I just watched last month at South by Southwest the premiere of your film, United States versus Reality Winner. This film, I believe, premiered at the 2020 Toronto Film Festival. So you've got two films that you're working on and releasing at the same time. Were you actually shooting them at the same time?
Yes, in fact, I was, and it's been challenging, being the director of like two quite different films, and yeah, kind of navigating the production and also the research of both of the films, because all of my films are usually quite research intensive. I like the type of rabbit hole subject matters. And so I was reading thousands of pages of court documents for both of the films. So yeah, it's been quite challenging. I'm going to admit that.
Well, I can only imagine, and I can only imagine what it was like to be pursuing these two stories in parallel. Both that film and this film deal, at least at first glance, with US government overreach, though this new film has a definite twist. Is that a topic that's been long of interest to you? Your production company is Codebreaker Films, after all.
Yes, absolutely. When you go into the production of an independent feature documentary film, I think you have to be truly interested in the subject matters, because you spend years of your life investigating and really working on one film and one subject matter, and you go really deep into it. And yeah, I studied politics. I've been always interested in these type of security, national security stories. And so when I came across the Matt DeHart story, it immediately fascinated me. And I remember when I first heard about it from one of my sources, I spoke to my production partner and I said, have you, like, this is really a peculiar like story, and it involves the FBI and a drugging of of a person, and it's FBI interrogation. And we were actually still in the production of my previous film, National Bird, which is about the US drone war. So I was already kind of in a very research intensive project when I heard about the Matt DeHart story. And my producing partner, Ines Hofmann-Kanna, said like, oh, we can't take, this type of story on, at the same time. I was just preparing to, film in Afghanistan, but it never left my mind. And I really thought about Matt DeHart's story for a long time, for years. And when, my film National Bird was released, I kind of went back into it, and I started reading court documents and investigating it. And yeah, and I thought, this is, I really want to make this my next film project.
Well, you certainly take on some weighty topics, but you do so in a really interesting, innovative way, especially in this movie. How did you land upon the technique of these stylized reenactments with not just actors, but actors lip syncing the audio from the actual people? I've only ever seen that so far in one other film, which incidentally is also playing at the 2021 Annapolis Film Festival, Misha and the Wolves, though your movie does it to a much greater extent. So how did you come up with that?
I really have to watch the other film then. I'm, you know, I'm curious how they, you know, did it and you know, kind of, you know, work with this technique. For us, you know, and I really, I collaborate with my cinematographer, Torsten Lapp, and my editor, Maxine Gödecke, and also my composer and producer. I've been, you know, collaborating with my whole team, you know, across multiple projects and for a really long time. So, you know, early on when I have an idea, I actually go to them first and I ask them, you know, what do you think about this, you know, idea, the story? That's kind of what I have in mind. And then we really develop from the beginning sort of a visual style and a style of the film, which, you know, which we really think will transport the subject matter in the best possible way. So it's a lot of what I, you know, do in my films visually, and also, you know, in the editing with my collaborators is intentional. And so in this case, we came across the real audio of Matt DeHart retelling his very, yeah, you know, twisted, you know, complicated story in his own words, and so we knew we had to use that material because it, you know, it is a real, it's such an important source, and because, you know, we're making a film, we're not making a podcast. We really had to think about, like, how do we get this, you know, across in the most visceral way. And because, you know, a lot in the film, like sort of in the layers of the film, is about personal memory and, you know, people's perspectives, that, you know, is also, you know, a lot, you know, very contradictory. We thought about recreating these images based on his version of his story and his, you know, his storytelling essentially, and in his witness and his own testimony. And so yeah, I guess we approached it a little bit how, you know, you would do sort of lip syncing maybe in a music video. The actor who we were working with really had to memorize, you know, Matt DeHart's words, and we, you know, we met and we discussed, you know, how, you know, based on the audio, you know, what his, you know, like how he would transport it in a hearing, how he was talking, and really, you know, we started with the source, and then from there we tried to develop the images around it.
He didn't just have to memorize the words along with everyone else. He had to memorize the cadence, which, you know, is very particular. And I thought that everyone did a very fine job. So how did you cast for this, saying, we're going to put you in a documentary reenactments, we're not going to hear your own voice, however?
Well, I cast first by both, you know, talent, obviously, but also looks, because, you know, I really, you know, I knew how important it would be not to confuse people. You know, if we would have you know, an actor who would look very differently, it's, you know, it is after all, you know, a documentary, but it's also, you know, at the same time a movie where people have to follow a narrative, and I would say it's quite a challenging film. So, you know, the content of this film is really, you know, it's there's so much happening, you know, in one story, and you really have to pay attention, and there are a lot of layers. And I do think, you know, we expect a lot from our audience as well. You know, this is not the type of film where you can like be on your cell phone and be tweeting and so on, because if you miss, you know, piece of information, you might, you know, miss something very important twist in the film. But yeah, you know, we were looking at a lot of different, you know, actors, and we had them actually, you know, early on present some of the lines that are in the film to see, you know, this is based on a real person, a real story, to see if we got a match. And what is really important too is that the way these scenes, you know, come across and are so, you know, real also, you know, has a lot to do with my editor's talent. Maxine Gödecke is, you know, just such an incredibly, you know, talented editor and storyteller. And and she, by editing like frames, over and over again, and going over these scenes so intricately, I think that has a lot to do with how it eventually comes across.
Well, I agree that your editor and your cinematographer and your composer, all of whom you've mentioned, so you've got Thorsten Lapp, Maxine Gödecke, and your composers Inse Rudolph, and you've worked with them. I think I only saw that of those three, Inse Rudolph wasn't on all three of your films, or maybe she wasn't, I just missed the credit. But you have
Yes.
this team that you work with over and over again, all part of Codebreaker Films, I assume. I noticed they're all German. I'm assuming you have a German background, or it's just a coincidence. But how have you formed this team and continued to collaborate with them?
Yeah, I grew up in Germany. I was born in Malaysia, but I grew up in Germany, and with the type of work that I do, which is quite high risk, everything I think in the national security space nowadays, comes with a risk, especially if you work with, original sources. And it is important to me to, have a team that that are all of them, and in particular, my producing partner, Ines Hofmann-Kanner, she's an excellent researcher and a journalist herself. And I couldn't do these type of films without them, to be honest. They are all journalists. They've all worked on these type of subject matters before. There's trust. They all are really, really great researchers. Like our film, like people, like sometimes, they see a film, and especially with like this type of documentary, what you see is the tip of an iceberg, in terms of research. Like underneath it is this like whole, sort of other world of like research and people that we talk to, and like background, investigations, like, and, like hours of material and archival material that really you don't see in the film. And just to, to stay, accurate and be, so careful with the material and with the sources. I really rely a lot on my collaborators, and I'm really glad that you mentioned them, because film is always teamwork, and in particular, with our background in Germany, my producing partner, for example, she grew up in East Germany, so the theme of government surveillance, is something that we all are so personally interested in, and that we've learned about or experienced ourselves. And I think that is also kind of just a very strong motivator for us to stay on these types of subject matters and not be discouraged when you get like interview rejections and your Freedom of Information Act requests are denied, but like to really kind of push, because we so strongly believe in government transparency.
Which is such an important topic. And that's a rather huge accusation that Matt's mother, Leanne DeHart, levies against the CIA and FBI about the 2001 anthrax attacks, when she finally says what this is ostensibly all about. And it seems like that is going to be the great revelation of your film. But then the way the story evolves somewhat undercuts that, because it turns out that there's more to the child pornography accusations than we originally thought. And so the journey of your film is this roller coaster of revelations. Where do you land on whether there is any actual merit to the government conspiracy thesis of the DeHarts?
I mean, that's also where sort of my team comes in, because we've been discussing it over and over again. And to be honest, we all come, we are not of one opinion. Like each of us has a bit of a different interpretation, and that's what what was really important for me in sort of the narrative structure of the film, was that it follows the journey of our own investigation. So it felt this investigation was like an onion, that you unpeel and you get through these layers, or as you said, roller coaster ride. And what you experience as an audience in the film is really very close to what we experienced as a journalists and a film team, because we started at one point, where we knew about Matt DeHart's story and, the parents' perspective. And we landed, throughout our journey, at a very different point. And we heard all these different perspectives. And there were some parts of the story that we couldn't independently verify. And so, and as you see, there are also very direct contradictions in the story. And what, I thought was important is to present all the perspectives that we could find, and really present everything that we investigated, and I think it was quite a lot, but to the audience to reach their own conclusions, because that is, I think, at the end of the day, it kind of mirrors our reality the most, because our reality is not always black and white. There are a lot of shades of gray, and there's a lot of ambiguity, and I know that a lot of people are frustrated by ambiguity or by secrets, but honestly, that's the way it is. And I am not going to, speculate in my films or trying to tell people, what I believe if I cannot, provide all of the evidence. So I shared what we could find, and, a lot of it is actually our real sources and hard evidence. But some of the things, as the reporter Adrian Humphrey says, some of the answers Matt DeHart has, some of the answers and some of the evidence the FBI still has. So we are actually still following up on some of these threats. But yeah, I really present in the film what I could find. And in terms of the, of course, like what you're saying about the anthrax accusations, I spent a lot of time investigating that part of the story, and it, there is evidence still lacking that is crucial. These USB sticks, honestly, we were hoping till the very end.
Mm-hmm.
We had some leads of where these USB sticks could be. We've been talking to a lot of people on background, but at the end of the day, we never physically got them. So in the absence of that type of evidence, I really didn't want to get into the territory of, speculations and, conspiracy theories, because a part of the film is also how information can spread so quickly over the internet. And we've been seeing how damaging baseless conspiracy theories could be. So I do, I caution the audience, but also, myself, in just really being cautious until you have the evidence and the original sources.
Very wise approach, I would say, to all things, especially in our conspiracy-fueled era. So final question, have you shown this film to the DeHarts? And if so, what has their reaction been?
So as you can imagine, after Matt DeHart did not show up to the interview, that was, a very big surprise, and kind of a shock to our team, because we'd prepared it so far in advance. This we had spoken to his attorney. His attorney was actually ready to take questions from him, if he needed legal support. And what might not be obvious in the film is actually we filmed with Matt DeHart and his family the morning of the interview. So when you see the person walking towards the family's house, when you see the Scrabble game, that is the real Matt DeHart. So everything had been arranged. We traveled out there, we filmed with the family, and then we took a break to set up for the interview, so they wouldn't have to wait, because it takes us quite a while to set up our interviews. And then at the time when the interview is scheduled, I get a call from a suppressed number, and I pick up the phone, and it's Matt, who said, I can't do it. And I was very, very surprised. And I asked, why, and he said he got, advice from an attorney, which for us was very surprising because we had spoken to his attorney, but it was apparently a different attorney. So yeah, what happened then is, like, clearly as a film team, an independent film team, we had invested a lot to prep this the shoot. So we were definitely, yeah, like quite shocked about that development. And obviously we had a lot of questions for him, and I had a lot of questions for him. But after the interview that never happened, we continued speaking to the family. And so we, my production partner Ines and I, we have kind of a protocol for preparing our interview partners for release. It's kind of a step-by-step process. And we try to discuss kind of what could happen, about the film festivals, and then we do a verbal walk through the film, and eventually, we offer to present the film. And without COVID, we could do a safe environment screening in person. And we have to say we did a very detailed walkthrough through a film, like verbally at first, and Matt's reaction actually was quite interesting. And when we said, as we always prepared, I do prepare my interview partners along the way, that this is a journalistic exploration. I will investigate in all directions. And I repeated that over the phone, and he said that's exactly what he expected. And he never expected anything less. And he actually appreciates this journalistic approach. So that's, what we heard directly from him. And that he, did expect us to do, this investigation. And yeah, I mean, I think as of now, it's, he's out of prison. We have been in touch, and but it's, it's on an irregular basis, and we try to check in. But obviously, the family has to, I think, process a lot of information.
Well, it's certainly a pretty amazing film in the way you tell your story, again, with some very innovative techniques that I hadn't really seen before. And it's a mind-blowing narrative. So I want to thank you so much, Sonia Kennebec, for both making the film and agreeing to do this Q&A. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.